Hey, it's Webs here, and there's been 19 cards revealed for the Onyxia Lair mini set, which is a lot more than I ever expected in one day. There definitely are some really interesting cards, so let's go over them. The first card revealed today is Boomkin, which is a 5-cost Druid minion with 4 attack and 5 HP. This is a little bit better version of Groundskeeper, which restores if you have a high-cost spell in your hand, especially because of the fact that you don't have to rely on having high-cost spells in your hand. And it also gives you the chance of having some type of removal, but I do think this might be a little bit too slow to actually see much play unless you're using it in some type of Vander Druid deck, which does exist, so you could use it as an early game removal since it is going to cost 2 if you do use Vander in combination. But it also is a card that has anti-synergy with the next card, which is Raid Negotiator, which is a 4-cost Druid minion with 3 attack and 4 HP. With the battle cry, discover a choose one card. It has both effects combined. So because it is kind of anti-synergistic with this card, you're probably never going to want to choose Boomkin off of Raid Negotiator, but I do think Raid Negotiator is actually probably a decent card because there aren't actually that many choose one cards currently in standard. I think the actual worst target is the card that got revealed with it, which is Boomkin. Other than that, all the other ones are decent enough where it doesn't even matter what you choose off of Raid Negotiator. Sure, some of them are slower, such as the one that summons a bunch of totem treants, but besides that one, most of them are at least some type of playable. The first hunter card that got revealed today is Furious Howl, which is a 2-cost spell that reads draw 1 card, repeat until you have at least 3 cards. So looking at this card, the first thing that comes to mind is Face Hunter, which makes a lot of sense because it doesn't have a lot of ways to refill its hand after it goes through all its minions that it usually runs. You could also run this in Questline Hunter, which might be a lot more interesting, at least for me, because this does trigger your questline reward at the end, and it also draws you into additional spells so you can spam your hero power even more. So overall, I think this will probably find home in either one of those 2 decks, and it honestly is pretty playable. Hunter doesn't have too much draw power, so something like this is something that both of those decks kind of needed, just because Hunter's main weakness has been draw power historically, and introducing a card like this to add draw power might actually make those decks way more relevant than they already are. Second hunter card that got revealed today is a 5-cost minion with 3 attack and 3 HP, and the battle cry, summon a beast from your deck that costs 5 or less. So this could fit in either, again, Face Hunter or some type of Rat King deck, which might be a little bit interesting. Either way, it might change up how you're actually building your deck, and once Wolfen Tiger rotates out, then it might actually make it even better of a card for a deck like Face Hunter. But until then, I think Rat King Hunter might be the best home for it. It just really depends on how you want to build the rest of the deck, and if you want to cap out with Rat King at the top of your curve, or if you want to risk it and use this in like a Vander Hunter deck where you're reducing your higher cost beasts that might cost 8 or less to something that is within the range of this card. Either way, it's decent enough. The last hunter card revealed today is Dragonbane Shot, which is a 2-cost hunter spell that deals 2 damage and has the honorable kill to add an additional copy of it to your hand. This is great for Questline Hunter as it's a cheap enough spell that you can add it to that deck without worrying too much, and you can use it as ways to continue to trigger your questline reward at the end. It also is a good enough tool for a deck like Face Hunter to either kill off one of your opponent's minions or even just do 2 damage to your opponent's face. Either way, I think this is probably a decent card and will probably end up seeing play after some of the other cards that are rotating out rotate out. Now for the Demon Hunter cards. The first one being Keen Reflex, which is a 2-cost Demon Hunter spell that deals 1 damage to all minions and honorable kill, gain 1 attack this turn. So I think this is a pretty neat AoE, but at the same time, I don't know how strong this is actually going to be, given the fact that you can actually trigger it on your own minions because of all the tokens that you actually have. But at the same time, I don't know if it's going to be useful outside of a token Demon Hunter deck where you're trying to OTK with the new Demon Hunter hero. After Immolation Aura rotates out, this probably will see some play in Demon Hunter since Demon Hunter doesn't have a lot of AoE as it currently stands. The second Demon Hunter card is Wings of Hate, rank 1, which at rank 1 it summons 2 1/1 Fell Wings. So at rank 2 it gives 3, and then at rank 4 it gives 4. I don't know how strong this card's actually going to be. I can see it seeing some play in Token Demon Hunter, but at the same time, would you rather use your hero power on turn 1 or have this as an option? Because this is basically Wolven Tiger, but just for Demon Hunter instead of Hunter. Though you could combo this out with the Keen Instincts as revealed before, as this would give you a guaranteed +4 damage, though that's a 2-card combo for 3 mana, and I don't know how useful that's actually going to be. And finally, the last Demon Hunter card revealed is Razorglaive Sentinel, which is a 4-cost minion with 5 attack and 4 HP. And then after you play the left or rightmost card in your hand, draw a card. So basically this is an Outcast card, but without Outcast actually on it. Overall, I think this is probably decent in Questline Demon Hunter. Once Skull of Gul'dan rotates out, it's basically a Kazakusan Auctioneer, but for Demon Hunter only, though it really depends on how your deck's actually built. And since the questline is the only way Demon Hunter really has to cheat mana in standard Hearthstone, I don't know how useful this is going to be, because right now it turns out if you don't have a way to keep drawing your entire deck with a card like this, similar cards don't really see play, such as Kazakusan Auctioneer. There's still some weird wacky combos you can do in Priest or even in Rogue, or even Field Contact in Rogue, but most of those cards don't see play currently. Alright, now time for the Paladin cards, the first one being a 3-cost minion, Stormwind Avenger, with 1 attack and 5 HP, and then after you cast a spell on this minion, it gains +2 attack. So I really don't like Libram Paladin at all, and this is definitely a card for Libram Paladin, though Libram Paladin is rotating out, and it will be a good target probably after Libram Paladin rotates out, because 5 HP is actually pretty difficult for most classes to actually deal with right now. And given the fact that whatever you're going to buff her up with is probably also going to give her HP, thus making it an even harder target to actually hit, and will probably make silences a lot better in standard if they already aren't being used in every single deck. Though this does have some competition with Alliance Bannerman in a Paladin deck, I don't think you wouldn't want to run this and Alliance Bannerman just because they're both decent enough minions that both support buff Paladin in a way. So overall, probably a 4-ish star card. I don't like it because it supports one of the decks that I hate the most right now, but it is what it is. The second card is Battle Vindicar, which is a 2-cost minion with 1 attack and 3 HP, and it discovers a holy spell. So this is a non-neutral Scorpion and only for holy spells, but for Paladin, 90% of their spells are holy spells, and the ones that aren't are usually bad, so this is actually probably a really good recruiter. I could see this seeing a lot of play, especially if some of the other 2-cost cards rotate out. Now for the rogue cards, one of which I am very excited for, and the other one I love the artwork. SI7 Smuggler is a 3-cost rogue minion with 1 attack and 3 HP, and has the battle cry summon a random minion with cost equal to the amount of SI7 cards you've played this game. I am so shocked that they actually supported Questline Rogue after the United Stormwind set. It makes me wonder if we're going to see Mathis Shaw as one of the legendaries for this set, because he's overdue to be a legendary card. I know he's technically SI7 agent, but at the same time, he's such an iconic Warcraft character that's related to Stormwind that it would be a shame to have all these SI7 cards without having him as a card himself. And I think this card is probably decent. I don't know if it's actually needed, as it doesn't fulfill any roles that Questline Rogue didn't already have, as the SI7 Informant is 1 cost more, and it's a bigger threat, most likely, in most cases. Though this does have the possibility of generating some big minions depending on how many SI7 cards you actually run in the deck. And I think this will probably see some play just because of its name. Now for the really expensive rogue spell, Smokescreen, which is a 8 cost spell for rogue that draws 5 cards and triggers any death rattles drawn. So I feel like the cost of this card is purposely meant to be 8 to prevent really annoying combos with Lore Keeper Pullik. When I saw this card, I instantly thought of Pullik as a way to cheat out the big 10 cost 7/7 elemental with the death rattle that gives another 7/7 elemental. But then I remembered, because this card costs 8, you would want to use death rattles that cost lower than 8, so you could always guarantee draw them off of Smokescreen. Draw 5 is nothing to actually laugh about. That's probably strong enough on its own if it was cheaper. If you get any powerful death rattles off of this is actually going to give you so much advantage that it isn't even funny, especially if you can stack your deck with a card like Pullik. Though when it comes to rogue death rattles, the highest cost rogue death rattle is the one on screen right now. And this card has literally never seen any play, and I still don't think this card will make it see play. I think this is the reason why they made it 8 costs, so you would guarantee have this off of it, because it is cheaper than Smokescreen. But I think the win more strategy would be use Pullik along with Vander to discount your death rattles in the deck so they're lower cost than Smokescreen. So you could then use Pullik in combination with Preparation to then draw into your big elementals or your Forge Fiends or whatever other death rattle you want to guaranteed. Though I think the more consistent way will be to use the Humongous Owls as your death rattle along with some other expensive death rattles. It just depends on how you'll actually want to do it. But I do think there is a really fun deck right here, and I really want to try it out. It is probably going to be the #1 deck I want to try out when the set comes out. It really depends on what other cards get revealed, but so far, a Smokescreen deck using Preparation, Pullik, and maybe Vander is definitely a deck that I really wanted to try out, especially because of the fact I've already tried to make Vander Death Rattle Rogue work in the past, but the key combination that I thought would work with sketchy information didn't, so I ended up scrapping the deck. And while the card might not be that good overall, it is still a really fun card, and I'm looking so forward to making this one work. And now for the Shaman cards. Shaman is getting their mount. It was one of the only classes that didn't. So maybe we'll actually see the other mounts that we didn't see whenever United Stormwind came out. And this one is a 2 cost spell for Shaman that reads give a minion +1/+2 and spell power +1. And when it dies, you summon a Spirit Raptor. I think this is probably decent enough for a spell power damage Shaman deck, but at the same time, Shaman doesn't need that much cheap spell damage. It already has a bunch of it, so I don't know how useful this is going to be, especially when you have a card like Primordial Studies that is still in standard, but once that rotates out, that might replace it in a Burn Shaman style deck. I think it's a decent enough card, so it'll probably see some play eventually. The other card for Shaman revealed is Bracing Cold, which is a 2 cost frost spell that restores 5 health to your hero and reduce the cost of a random spell in your hand by 2. So this is probably meant to be a control tool, but because it has mana cheat on it, I'm assuming a aggro deck might actually want to use it to try to cheat out some type of damaging spell, which is something that I don't like seeing in the game. You'd think they've learned by now after nerfing Mithril Rod by 2 mana or nerfing Enchantress Flow by 2 mana that anything with mana cheat is really problematic. I know this card itself isn't problematic if they don't print some high power spell for Shaman, but at the same time, it has a lot of potential to break Shaman in the next year. But for right now, it's a fine card. It's probably an average card and might not even be ran. Now for the Warlock cards. Infestation is a 6 cost spell for Warlock that summons a 3/3 Dread Imp to attack each enemy minion. This is basically a cheaper Soul Mirror, I guess, for Warlock, and technically is another fel spell, but not exactly what I was thinking when I said I really hope we see a Fel spell payoff for Warlock. I don't think this card is good at all. It might be good in some type of like control deck as another board clear for Fel Warlock, but at the same time, I don't see this seeing play. There's too many other good board clears in Warlock, especially even Felfire in the Hole. You get one additional spell power on Felfire in the Hole, and it does a shit ton more damage than something like this. And this is just basically a worse Hellfire. And the second spell that got revealed for Warlock is a spell that might be actually problematic if Warlock has enough ways to generate additional copies of this. Curse of Agony, which is a 1-cost spell, and it shovels 3 Agonies into the opponent's deck. They deal fatigue damage when drawn, and it's a shadow spell. So this being a shadow spell that doesn't cost 0 means Sin be able to generate an additional copy of this each time you cast it, along with the fact it being 1 cost. Wand Maker can also generate additional copies, and you can also generate additional copies with Scorpid or some other cards in Warlock. There might be some weird fatigue deck that doesn't actually bring your opponent into fatigue with Warlock. It's kind of weird to see something like this supported after all this time, and I know people don't really like seeing fatigue lock, but I think this might be a really fun deck to actually try to play. I just don't think it's going to be fun to play against if it is meta relevant. I really hope it isn't, because this could probably get really out of control really quickly depending on how many recruiters you can find to generate additional versions of Curse of Agony. Hell, you could even throw Faceless Manipulator into a deck with Sin to generate additional copies. And the more that I think about it, the more a deck like that actually seems maybe a little bit viable. I don't know how viable it'll be in the end, but just from one Curse of Agony alone, that's 6 damage. Hell, at 2 copies, this is 21 damage. And thinking about it, if you get even 1 additional copy, that's just lethal through this. It's basically Bomb Warrior or Garroot Rogue, except I guess a little bit quicker, depending on how often you can generate more copies of it. Sure, if your opponent isn't drawing through their entire deck as quickly as humanly possible, this isn't probably going to be a decent strategy, but it is going to be a really funny strategy to try out. And this might actually be a deck that dethrones the Smokescreen deck as the first deck that I want to try out. Or maybe the second deck, I don't know. I think this is probably going to be really strong. And now for the Warrior cards. The first one being a reference to a old Warcraft meme video. It's a 1-cost spell for Warrior, which is called Hit It Very Hard, and gain +10 attack and cannot attack heroes this turn. The first deck that I thought of with this card is Silas Warrior. I love Silas Warrior as a deck. I don't know how useful this is going to be, given the fact that Warrior doesn't really have any ways to cheat out mana except for minions. And the minions that you'd want to cheat out for the combo would be Silas and Ashen Tongue, but Ashen Tongue can't be reduced below 1. So you'd only be reducing Silas. So at a minimum, you need 3 of these to actually finish off your opponent by attacking into the Ashen Tongue. But it could still be an idea to replace the having to rely on a bunch of armor gain throughout the game to actually do the full combo. Who knows? Maybe it will be a deck that will actually pop up again. Maybe it'll be an alternate win condition for Control Warrior after Charge Warrior. But honestly, I think Charge Warrior is going to be a lot stronger. And then finally, for the other Warrior card, it is Shoulder Crack, which is a 1-cost tradable spell that gives a minion +2/+1 and rush. So this is actually a pretty decent card, just because it lets you cycle through the deck. It also allows to make any minion that you possibly would want have rush, so you could use a minion that might cost a bunch, such as Rattlegore, as a removal tool for another big minion on your opponent's board. I think this is a decent enough card to probably see a lot of play, even in like an aggro warrior deck. It's a buff that just helps you out. There's nothing much more to say about this card. Now for a card that has been a fan theory for a long period of time, Kazakusan, aka Kazakus as a dragon. It's a 8-cost legendary neutral minion with 8 attack and 8 HP, who is a dragon that has the battle cry. If all of the minions in your deck are dragons, craft a custom deck of treasures. By custom treasures, it means the treasures from duels. I don't really play duels at all as a game mode, but a lot of those treasures are actually really high impact, so a card like this is probably going to be absolutely insane if it didn't have the condition that all your minions had to be dragons. I think it's going to be a really fun card to test out in a bunch of different decks, but I don't think this is going to be competitively viable, though if you do want to try to use this card in combination with Lady Prestor to turn all your minions into a dragon as a last-ditch effort to actually win the game, that could be a alternate win strategy for some of the decks that don't try to go into a late game strategy and try to finish the game off quickly. But besides that, I don't know what class besides Priest is probably going to use a card like this. It really depends if we see a bunch more dragons for all the additional classes and a bunch of more neutral dragons that are actually really good. But Priest is probably going to be the home just because it's an easy card to include in Priest. Sadly, it means the Dragon Maw Sentinel, which was a card that I was really looking forward to trying to use in a deck, isn't playable in a Dragon Priest deck. But at the same time, I really love the flavor of this card, and I'm looking forward to see what the other two legendaries are. I think there should be two more. I'm assuming they're probably going to be class legendaries, and one's probably going to be Lady Prestor as Onyxia, but I don't know which class that's going to fit in. And my other assumption is Shaw as a rogue legendary. So let me know what cards you're actually looking forward out of this bunch. There's quite a few cards and interesting decks that I'm kind of worried a little bit about some of them, but at the same time, they should be fun and should shake up the meta at least for a week or two after this set drops. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, bye bye.